Alright, so today, back at it. I know I said I was gonna take the wiring harness off a while ago, but I'm just now getting to it. Just because I was just taking off pieces as I needed them, and then taking the wiring harness, unhooking it from the pieces I needed. But taking the injectors out, now the injector connectors out. Now on these right here, you just push on the back, and it brings that metal piece up out of that groove, and that groove attaches to these little side clips right here. Can you see it? Yeah, that side clip right there. So if you push those in far enough, where it comes off of that, that's what holds them on the clip right there, off the clip, and then you pull them off. It's like that on both sides. But you don't have to mark these. These are already marked. See? 1, 3, 5, 7. See, and that's the 1, 3, 5, 7. And then the other side will be marked 2, 4, 6, 8. But yeah, we'll go ahead and take the wiring harness off. And I have been marking the connectors as I take them off. I'm pretty familiar with these wire harness, and I pretty much know where everything goes, but it's just a lot easier to mark everything. Now, on these, on this stuff like right here, this emission stuff, and this emission stuff, I'm not marking those plugins because we're not putting that stuff back on. All it does is rob horsepower. But yeah, so that side's undone. Really the only thing on this side was that and the 4 injectors. And then there's the old pressure sensor on this side of the fuel rail anyway, or on the intake, whatever. Now on this side there's a little bit more stuff. There's this part of the evap AIR. There's that one. There's this one. I think that's it for this side, and then the injector connectors for this side. So we'll go ahead and take the injector connectors loose on this side, and the wiring harness should come off. Now on this side there's the manifold absolute pressure and the auto air control and the throttle position sensor too. Forgot to mention those. The rest of the stuff, whatever was connected down here, I've already unconnected. So yeah, you guys watched that big long video about me taking the harness and computer off the car, taking the motor out. There's this vacuum port right here. Oh, this vacuum port right here. This is that top one I just took off right there. Right there. This one goes back. It goes to a vacuum canister in your passenger fender, and then it also goes into the car. This is what makes your vents for your heating and cooling work. It works off vacuum off the motor. So there's that too. Yeah, now I think that's it. Besides the injectors, I got 2 more injectors to take off. And when you push these in, sometimes they don't straddle them pins just right, and you gotta fight with it a little bit, but you get it just right, pushing that metal piece in, it should pop right off. But like I said, sometimes one side will get stuck on the ledge on the injector and it won't push out. See, like this one's doing. Well, that side come off. See, like this side's doing. It's not coming off. In that case, I just put a screwdriver on this lip and pull that up, pop it off. And again, if you watched my video of me taking the motor out of the car, there's the ground wire that comes off the harness. That one absolutely has to be hooked up. Sometimes this one will be hooked here. Sometimes it'll be hooked there. And sometimes some people, they'll hook it to the bottom of the car, down by the K member. But yeah, there's the ground wire, and then there's just a starter wire. And all this will come off. It's that little bitty starter wire. That's the only thing holding it on, but I'm not going to mess with that right now because we're not going to take the starter off the ship. I might just take that all off together. Now, The intake, it's easier just to take this steam hose off. This steam hose, it runs up through here. It's got one mounting point right here, and it's got two mounting points on the back of the head. So we're going to go ahead and take that off. It's just a banjo bolt here and a banjo bolt over there. Alright, so if you put your motor back to stock, keep note, I got all that off. This one had this nut and that on to hold the coolant bypass. I took that off. When you take it off, be real careful not to bend it, especially in the back. You'll never get it to line back up again. But it had a little piece on it that bolted here. I already took that bolt out. But keep a note of how these go back in, because some of these stuff bolts to. Look at that. That intake bolt was completely loose. I haven't even touched that one yet. Threw it out with my finger. But like most of this, we're not gonna. That was for the. I don't even think nothing was bolted to that one. There was something bolted to that one. We'll probably keep that one on this rod right here. I mean, it really doesn't matter how they go back in as long as there ain't nothing bolted to them. And it don't look like nothing's bolted to these. But this one's got the studs in the middle. There is something bolted to that one back there. Let me get around there. Yeah, so, but we're taking that off. So that's not gonna matter. So the three stud ones were right here in the middle, and this one right here. But on this side, the studs were just these two right here, and one in the back. But yeah. Alright, I got the intake off. And this thing is nasty. It has not had the oil changes as frequently as it should have. So the oil pump drive, I took the nut out of it, but it won't come out because I'm probably going to have to turn the cam to get it out. I'm not going to be able to turn the... It'd be a lot easier to turn the cam if I just go ahead and take the rocker arms off. Took the valve covers off. They're just center bolt. There's one here, one there, and one there. Just 4 bolts. Take those off and that comes off. I give the intake to a buddy of mine. He's got a parts cleaner. He's going to clean it. And because it was nasty. So yeah, let's zip these rocker nuts off and pull the push rods out and turn the cam over a little bit because we need that piece for the other motor. Alright, so this is the oil pump drive. That's what I was taking out in the back of the intake. It would not pull out. And most times they pull out easy. So what I had to do was I flipped the motor over. I took the oil pump out. Well, I took the windage tray out first. There's something on the windage tray. Oh, I'm shaking. On these windage trays, every time I take one out of these cars, it breaks right there. And right there it is. So, there's that. But now on this right here, look at this. On this right here, see that shiny spot? That's supposed to be all gear. Look at that. See, like that one, that's a full gear right there. Just about. It's wore too, but not as bad the rest of these. Look at the rest of these. Look at that. Almost all the gear's gone. I wonder why it wore like that on one side and not the other. But yeah, look at that one. It's almost completely gone. I wonder what caused that to do that. You're supposed to replace these anytime you put a cam in a car. But look at that. This side right here, it ain't hurt at all. Well, it is a little. You can see a little bit of shiny right there. But I mean, there's a lot of thickness to the gear right there. But now look at these. There's nothing left hardly. Look, that one's just a slither. It's almost completely gone. So that's going to have to be replaced for sure. There's no way you can put that back in the motor. Alright, we'll save the oil pump drive for later. We can go ahead and put the lifters in. So you just drop, these are LS7 lifters. You just drop them down in the hole there. Try to get the flat side straight up because the dog bone has to go over that. There we go. And just slide them all in. Once you get all the lifters down in there, some will be up higher than others just because where the cam's at. These dog bones are the same on both sides, so I guess it matters which way they go. And you just slide them. See how they have the groove, the flat sides? That's why you want the flat side up, so it lines up with that. But you might have to turn the lifter some. You just set that in there like that, and that's what keeps the roller lifter straight. And then I call this the lifter spider. That goes on there like that. And these little arms go over top of that spider and act like a spring to hold it in place. Well, I mean, unless it's a really big lift cam, it's not going to come up much, but that holds it down. It bolts right on the top there with these 3 bolts, and that holds it down. So we're going to put that in. Not much to it at all. That's what holds them dog bones down. And when the motor turns over, the lifter comes up and down in them dog bones, and that flat spot on the lifter, so it keeps it all straight. Usually I lube those putting them in. I soak mine in oil for like 24 hours. I don't know if that matters or not. Some say not to do that, some say do it. I do it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Now let's go ahead and put the push rods and the rocker arms in. Alright, I marked the cap tips of these with black marker. You can see those are shiny. And I pushed down on the push rod and I turned the motor over until both lifters were all the way down. Now I'm going to put the rocker arms on. I'm going to turn the motor over a couple times and see how that mark looks. Now you're supposed to do this with a weak valve spring because more than likely it's just going to push the plunger down into the lifter. But at least give us an idea if it's close. Alright, when you set, there's a flat side and a rounded side. Make sure your that piece down on there, that piece down in there, it spins. Make sure the flat side's up. And if you got good, clean, oiled up studs and good, clean poly locks, you can just turn this down and you'll feel when it hits. Make sure the guide plates are keeping everything nice and straight, and they are. So like, just make sure it don't start turning the plunger down, and it didn't. So we're gonna give these I don't know, probably 1/8 of a turn. Probably just gonna go 1/8 of a turn. And I'm gonna turn the motor over a few times, take them back off, and see what our mark looks like. To check what the push rod length is. My mom's over there burping. She come to visit. We had a cookout. Say hi, Mom. It's like, don't show me. Well, like I said, you're supposed to do this with weak springs. So it does push down on the plunger some. But that's what we came up with. I'm going to call it good enough for me. Because that's the only push rods we got anyway. Alright. Now we're just going to put all the rocker arms on. We're going to put some oil on these studs. They're dry. And then put all the rocker arms on. Just like I said before, flat side up. And we're going to adjust them like we did before. And when I say flat side up, see, that's the flat side. That's the rounded side. Now I can't spin it back around. Flat side up. That's the rounded side down. Flat side up. Alright, when you set these, here's the exhaust. It's lined up with the exhaust port. On a small block Chevy, it goes exhaust, intake. See, that one's lined up with intake port. That one's lined up with intake port. Exhaust port. Exhaust port. Intake port. Intake port. exhaust port. And the firing order on a small block Chevy is 184366572. Now, the exhaust is going to open first. The lifter is going to push up. It's going to push up on the push rod. The rocker arm is going to tilt this way. It's going to raise it here and push it down back here and push the valve down. And then this will come up like this and go back down. As this one's going down, this one, the intake will start to open. It'll come up, it'll go back down. Once it goes back down, which I've already done this one, I turn the motor over just a little bit more to make sure both of those are on the base lobe of the cam and not on the lift part of the cam. You don't want it on the lift part of the cam. Now, on these poly locks, it's really easy because you can, if you've got a good clean stud and a good clean poly lock, you'll tighten these down and just by finger and you'll feel it hit. See, it's it right there. See? Now, what a lot of people will say to do is spin it, like if the intake's on. It's a little bit harder to do this because you can see that little retainer. See that little metal retainer in the plunger? You can see if you tighten it too tight, that plunger, see, it'll start to come off that retainer. That's not what we want. We want it right where the plunger and the retainer touch. Right there. Not there, not there. That's where we want it, right there, before we start our preload. Now, and like I said, you can just do these finger tight. Sound finger tighten it, and boom, I felt it hit. See, now it's going to start pushing the plunger down, see? Alright, so that's where we want to be when we start our preload. Now, a lot of people will say it isn't that easy when you do it with the stamped steel rocker arms, because the nut on those is actually kind of like a lock nut. You got to put your socket on there in a manner that you're not pushing down on the rocker arm or pushing down there on the stock rocker studs. There's a thing that goes down in them right here. This goes down in it. Round part towards the rocker arm part, flat part towards the nut. And then these nuts, they're like lock nuts. Flat side goes down, the round side goes up. So when you put the socket over top of those, you want to make sure that it's not hitting the sides of the rocker arm, or that you got the socket pushed down so far that it's hitting on this, because that'll throw you off. And when you're doing it with those, a lot of people say, just spin this till you can't spin it no more. No. Because look, that's where it needs to be. I ain't set my preload yet, and I can still easily spin it. What you're looking for is up and down movement. You want to tighten it until the up and down movement, right where the up and down movement is going. Don't do that spin thing. You'll get them too tight every time. Up and down movement. See, I got no up and down movement before my preload. See, and that's the way I see now. I barely loosen that. I got up and down movement. Up and down movement. Up and down movement. Up and down movement. Won't go until that up and down movement. I mean, there's a tiny bit there. And right there, the up and down movement's gone. And that's where you want to set your preload. Because if you get a soft lifter that plunges in really easy, and you do that spin method, you will tighten it up, and the plunger will bottom out before you're not able to spin that no more. And your valves are going to be set way wrong. So now that we got the up and down movement gone, most people go 1/4 to 1/2 a turn. I usually do 1/8 of a turn, and then I tighten the Allen all the way up, as tight as I can get it, and then I'll tighten the Allen and the nut up at the same time to lock them together, to lock it down on that rocker stud. That way they don't come off. I've seen people just tighten the Allen as tight as they can, and I've seen these come loose. And if that falls down in your motor, you're gonna be digging in your oil pan to get it out. So that's what I do. So we're gonna do like an eighth of a turn, and then I'm gonna stick this Allen down in there. I'm gonna tighten this all the way up. So when you do this, it's going to turn another eighth turn. Now that I got both of those on there, I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to have two hands to do this. Now I'm going to grab this and grab the wrench with the other hand and tighten them together. And it'll turn about another eighth turn. That'll give me a quarter turn altogether. So now if you want to go in the firing order, it's 1, 8. That'll be the next one we can do. And I mean, once you know you've already got this one done, you can turn the crank exactly a quarter turn and go to the next one. Once you know that you're on the base lobe on this one, turn the crank 1/4 of a turn, and that'll put you on 8. And then it'll put you on 4, and then 3, and then 6, and then 5, and then 7, and then 2. Yep, and that's the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to tighten these together, and then I'm going to turn the motor exactly a quarter turn. I'm going to go over to 8, and I'm going to go through all of them like that in the firing order, and that's going to set my rocker arms. Now you'll see I got this one set, and you'll see now that it's set, I'm barely off that, the plunger is barely off that retainer, and all of them should be about exactly the same, just like that. And if your studs are all the same size and the length, you should have the same amount of threads here to your Allen nut, which we do. So that looks good. We'll move on to the next one. We'll just do them all like that. And the firing order. Turn the crank 1/4 of a turn from here over to here, quarter turn, and we'll go to 8. And then 1, 8, 4, 3, 6, 5, 7, 2, quarter turn. Every time we do one, we'll set those. And then you can look down through there and you'll see about the same amount of threads are shown on every one of them, like it should. If you got the same rocker studs in all of them, same poly lock, they should all look about the same. And on the lifters that are down, you should see it off the retainers some. Same amount on all the ones that the lifter's all the way down. See? See, they're all about the same. And that's pretty much it for it. Now, when you turn the motor over, it collapses the lifter some, and you will get a little bit of movement when it's down, and that's normal. So don't be like, oh, now I got movement, what's going on, I gotta redo it. No, that's fine, leave it alone. That's what you wanted. So with the 1/8 of a turn and then the turn that I did to tighten the poly lock and the nut together, that was an 1/8 turn. So these wound up being right at a quarter. And I'll be honest with you, if it's a motor I race, I only do an 1/8 turn. You think they'd run better tighter, but they run better lighter. But yeah. But I think that's going to conclude this video. I'm going to go watch some football, some Sunday night football, and then next time we'll flip it over. Sometimes when you flip them over, that'll fall out. But that's locked pretty good, snapped pretty good together. It's pretty new, so I don't think it's gonna, plus it's one of the metal ones, so I don't think that's gonna come out. So tomorrow probably come out here and put the windage tray on it and get the oil pan cleaned up. It's sitting over there, and put the oil pan on it. Then we can flip it back over, and all we got to mess with is this. And then I'll just have to wait for Brandon to bring the intake back before we can do that. But before we put the intake on, we got to get another gear for the oil pump drive. The cam turns. Can you see the cam gear down in there? Anyway, there's a cam gear down in here. Yeah, it's right there. It's right up against the side there. I don't know if you can see it or not. But right up inside that hole, there's a cam gear. I can't see very good. There's a cam gear. So what happens is, you know, the pistons fire, push each other down, they turn the crank turns timing cover. Timing cover turns the cam comes back here, turns the oil pump drive, and then the oil pump drive goes down there and turns the oil pump. And that's how that works. And then the cam opens your lifters up and down to let the air fuel in and the exhaust out through the intake ports and through the exhaust ports. Yep, that's how that works.